Women Who Own It podcast spotlights women business owners who are pioneers in their field, setting trends, blazing trails, and creating game-changing innovations. Brought to you by WBENC, the largest certifier of women-owned businesses in the U.S. and a leading advocate for women business owners and entrepreneurs. And me, Allison Maslin. I've been a business owner for the last 35 years. I'm the Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the book, Scale or Fail. So join our bold community of women who built it, grew it, and own it. I'll see you on the show. Welcome to Women Who Own It podcast, brought to you by WBENC, the largest certifier of women-owned businesses. Women Who Own It is for women business leaders by women business leaders. And I am your host, Allison Maslin. I'm the CEO and founder of Pinnacle Global Network, where we mentor business owners around the world to grow and scale companies that change the world. And speak of world changers, we have someone here on Women Who Own It today. I'm so excited for you to meet. Her name is Maureen Mulvihill, and she is a Life Sciences PA CEO of the Year and has been recognized over 35 times nationally and internationally for her entrepreneurial leadership. In 2017, she was a U.S. delegate to the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in India. She has been appointed to the Life Sciences PA Board of Directors, ADVA Med Board of Directors, and ADVA Med Excel Board of Directors to give voice to small emerging medical device companies. She also sits on the Industrial Advisory Board for the Penn State Center for Biodevices and Regional Board for Kish Bank. She is an alumnus of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and Maureen received her PhD from Penn State. About 15 years ago, she co-founded Actuated Medical Incorporated, located in Central PA, on the entrepreneurial idea that electronically controlled motion can solve clinical needs and improve patient outcomes, which is so fascinating. Actuated is one of the few med tech companies led by a female CEO and is also certified by WOSB and by WBENC. So, Maureen, with that great intro, welcome to Women Who Own It.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Very honored to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. Congratulations on all of the success that you've had. Let's go way back here because we have a lot we're going to dive into today, but did you always know that you wanted to be a business owner?
No, absolutely not. But, thinking about it, I guess I've always been entrepreneurial, right? When I was 10 years old, I had a paper route and I really loved interacting with people and collecting the money. My brother's like, I'll deliver if you collect the money, that kind of thing. But really wasn't until I came across this doctor and was talking to him that I had the idea of starting the company. So I was much older when I started.
Yeah. Well, collecting money is an important thing in business. So
it is.
That is a skill you learned early on, which is great. And then, so what did lead you to create your current company, Actuated Medical?
So I was working for another company, and the company was doing motion devices about the size of a grade of rice. And I was sitting in this doctor's office and I was saying, hey, these little actuators could really help with blood clots. And he's like, Maureen, I don't need the actuator. I need the whole medical system. And I went to my boss and I said, we need to do medical devices, not just the motion devices. And he's like, well, that's not what I want to do. So I went home and I said to my husband, either we're starting a company or we're moving because there's something we can do. And that was 15 years ago. So it was actually just started on the idea of improving patient outcomes with motion.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that so that those of us that are not in that medical device industry understand, because it seems really fascinating that this is based on motion.
Motion, right. So my PhD is in a field called material science, and that's where I was studied under different types of motion. So motors are used to drive your cars. Motors are used to do all kinds of things. And so the motors that I was familiar with were what they call piezoelectric motors, and they're very small, but they have very precise motion. So we take advantage of that precise motion to make the medical devices better than what they have right now.
Yeah, that's right, because we are in motion. as human beings. So that would kind of make sense.
Right.
Well, that's so fascinating. Now, only 6% of medical device companies are led by women.
That's true.
That's not enough.
No, not at all.
It's not enough. Do you feel like that's changing?
I think it is changing. There's a lot of medical device startups that are being led by women, and these women have really creative ideas, a lot for maternal care or pediatric care or even cardiac care. So there's a lot of women stepping into the field now. And then there's a lot of women that are now being promoted in the larger companies, and they're being promoted to C-level positions. So it's coming. It's taking a long time, but it is coming. And there is a lot of emphasis in education and promoting people to the different levels and mentoring and things like that.
Yeah, I would imagine, like you, there are a lot of women out there with some very creative ideas that would make a huge difference in the industry. And so just in business in general, you didn't plan to be a business owner. You obviously have a lot of science and tech in your background, but what would you say is your favorite thing about business, and maybe your least favorite thing about business?
I would say that my favorite thing is when we hear a story about a patient, right? So the first patient we ever helped was a 27-year-old soldier at Walter Reed. So not only did our device clear his feeding tube so he could get his medication and his nutrition and hydration on schedule, but we helped this human being, but we also helped a soldier that was injured fighting for this country. So it was a really remarkable day for our small company. And then in COVID times, similar situation happened where there was a child and the feeding tube had been clogged for over 8 days. And the doctor found us by Googling, and we overnighted it to him. And he trained with some videos. I talked to him on the phone. We walked him through it, and he was able to clear that feeding tube of that child. So the child didn't need a surgical intervention, right? So we saved this child from having surgery. That's a good day. It's a good day.
So, well, first of all, that gives me chills. That is amazing. So what was he Googling? I mean, how would you know to Google
Well, he was
that?
so our first device on the market is a device called Tube Clear, and Tube Clear clears feeding tubes while the tube stays in the patient. So it's a critical care device, and that feeding tube is what they put the medication through. They put the nutrition through and the hydration, and they're very narrow tubes, and they clog at about a 25% clog rate. So he had this child, and we're actually not indicated for children, so I can't advertise our device for children, but we are indicated for adults. And so he was just Googling ways to clear feeding tubes, and he found us.
Oh my
And so then he contacted us, and so we were able to overnight the system to him, and he was able to clear that tube. So it was remarkable.
Every hospital needs that product.
Yeah, you let them know.
Okay.
Spread the word.
That's the plan with this podcast. We need to get that out there. And what's your least favorite thing? And the reason I ask that is because we've got women business owners or business owners listening to this, and we all have our ups and we have our downs. And I think it really helps for people to understand, okay, what have been some of the struggles for you?
I would say it's a roller coaster, right? We have our ups and our downs, and hopefully we're up higher than we're down. But I would say HR. I really, really dislike HR. And in the time of COVID, I really hate HR. But thanks to WBENC, and early on, they had a We Thrive class. And we took this class on leading in crisis. And so we took that to heart, and we started with weekly meetings. We started with just, here's the policy. Okay, now the policy changed a bit this week. Okay, now the policy changed again. But really, we've been upfront with our employees. And so we've been very safe during this time which has been a very scary time, of course. But HR, right? Because you have this great company, and then people complain. And you're like, how can you complain? This is great. But
well, and so speaking of, I think, just to touch on that, the open communication is everything, right? Just to keeping people out of the dark. I do understand the HR thing, and I know it's something that a lot of business owners are struggling with right now. Now, from what I read, your company has been a bit of a hero during COVID for all that you created, how innovative you were. How did this pandemic help you to innovate?
So, we're an FDA manufacturer, so everything we do is FDA compliant. Well, then they started talking about the COVID PPE shortage. And so our team said, what, we can start doing face shields. And so within 7 days, we brought up a face shield manufacturing line. So that's great. We were delivering face shields to first responders. We were delivering it to nursing homes. We were delivering it to all kinds of people. Even the Navajo Nation got our face shields, and a couple other Native American groups got our face shields, and individuals got our face shields. But then parents started calling us and said, do you have face shields for kids? So we innovated a face shield for kids. And
Oh
then
my
we had
goodness.
a local meat packing plant say, can you innovate a face shield that hooks, fits on our hard hats? And so we innovated a face shield that fit on the hard hats. And then a local kids sporting good equipment place called us and said, can you put face shields on football helmets? So we innovated another face shield for football helmets, and we're still selling those on Amazon now because we're still in COVID. But anyway, we just kept innovating. People call us and we would say, yeah, we'll get it for you. We'll get it for you. And just recently, the local schools called again. So our biggest customers were like Penn State University and a lot of schools all across the country that needed face shields, so this teachers could, wear the face shields and the kids could see their smiles and whatnot. And like I said, even now these schools are starting up and they're calling us again for face shields.
Are you surprised at how quickly, I mean, you basically created a product in a week.
Mm.
Are you surprised? I mean, I think the pandemic did that for a lot of business owners. We kind of saw what we were made of.
Right, we did.
If
And we saw
someone would
the
have said
team,
to you, Maureen, we need a product in under a week, you would have gone, what? But you
especially
did
an
it.
FDA compliant. Like our face shields were FDA compliant. Our people were in garb, and everything was cleaned every night. Everything was packaged as per an FDA, what they would require. We actually, the area, the building next door was empty. So I called the landlord on a Sunday morning and said, hey, can we move into that 12,000 square foot facility? We walked in, we cleaned it up. It was a total team effort. Everybody wanted to help, and they did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that really is remarkable. So congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. So for small businesses in your field, inventing medical devices or any product for that matter can be challenging. What have been some of, we talked a little bit about the HR, but what have been some of your biggest business challenges, such as, marketing and sales and team building? And maybe, some of the things that you've done to improve on those.
Right. One of our biggest challenges is always capital. So the average medical device takes about 9 years to get through development and onto the market. And then it costs somewhere around $15 million. And so the idea of this company, bringing all that capital in and developing these medical devices was just really difficult. And so we've really figured out a diversification in funding streams to be able to be successful. And so we use small business innovation research grants from National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation. And we're building an entire intellectual property portfolio, and all of our devices build on each other. So we have devices that clear occlusions in tubes, which is the tube clear system.
Mm-hmm.
We have devices that vibrate needles for better tissue penetration, and that's all about our neuroglider system that helps put neural implants in. And then we have motion gripping tools for GI applications. But we didn't focus on just one thing. And so we don't have venture capitalists investing in us. We have some angel investors, and we have some debt, a lot of debt, but we use these small business innovation research grants to really do the early feasibility demonstrations.
Yeah. And I'm glad you bring up the debt, because there's good debt and bad debt, right? And I think a lot of times we, or business owners, stop from innovating or stop in their tracks from investing in the business because they don't have all the money there. And if you don't do that, then your business won't grow. So the good debt is when you're working towards something that's going to bring ROI, which is clearly what's happening in your case.
Right.
So, and are you constantly innovating new products? It sounds like you are.
We are. We're always looking for what can we take with, what can we put motion in to make it better? And so one of the newest things we're doing is neural implants. So, everyone's talking about putting neural implants in to control prosthetics or to control the Parkinson's shapes and things like that. But a lot of times they're using a hammer and they're putting this thing into your brain, right? That doesn't make sense. And so using our intellectual property, our patents, we're able to put these in much nicer. So they hit their target and they're not as, they don't tear the tissue as much, or they're not as abusive.
Oh, well, that sounds much better when you're
Yeah.
thinking of your brain, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That really is fascinating. And what advice would you offer to women business leaders running other emerging tech companies? Like they're either running them now or they're thinking of running them. What are some things that you've learned along the way of some advice you could give?
I have two pieces of advice. It's all about persistence and don't give up. If your gut is telling you you have something, keep going. And then the other one is everybody wants to give you advice, right? So you listen to the advice and you let it sift through. And if the device is helpful, you take it and you go with it. But if the advice is not helpful, just push it away. You do not have to do what everybody tells you. Do what makes sense of what your gut's telling you. So it's all about persistence, taking advice that's helpful and not taking bad advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, for sure. And I love you said about following your gut, that you really feel like something's right. Don't let somebody talk you out of it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
So how has WeBank, your certification with WeBank, being a WBE, how has that supported your business growth?
So we've been certified since 2008. So we're probably an old weeby now. I don't know, maybe, right? So anyway, I think I have taken every education class that WeBank has offered. So for me, it's been all about the education piece. A lot of CEO training classes, the Catapult program, the We Thrive has been instrumental during COVID. But in the sense of the Catapult program, which is the Capital One Catapult program, in the class, one of my classmates, we were talking about what Actuated does. She invested in my company and she now
Oh,
sits on my board of directors. So you think about what did WeBank do for me? Well, it got me an awesome board member and an investor.
oh my
Can't beat
gosh.
that. Yeah,
Well, it's the relationships,
it
right?
is.
And that's, it's really who is a powerful thing. I think WeBank helps in so many different ways.
Right,
So that's fantastic. I think the other bit of advice there, which is kind of what you said, was you're taking advantage of everything.
right.
I think that you've got to lean into WeBank, like attend, participate as much as you can.
And then one other point to that too is their COVID portal is how Nestle found us. And so Nestle's now one of our main face shield purchasers. And that was through WeBank too.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, through
Wow.
the portal. Yeah, they set that portal up really fast too. It was probably up
Yeah,
in 7 days, just like our facial line.
I know they did. They pivoted so quickly.
Yeah.
So back to your innovations. What do you feel like has been the biggest hurdle you faced in bringing these technologies to the market?
So I said about capital. So capital is always is the issue for a lot of medical devices, but getting to market is also really difficult. So hospital systems are very different. So let's say, I always say that, getting through FDA is difficult. Well, it was okay. We got through FDA. And then, hold on one second. Okay. So getting through FDA is difficult. Getting a CMS reimbursement code is difficult, but actually selling to hospitals is really difficult because every hospital has a different mission, a different vision. Every hospital requires a key opinion leader. Every hospital has a different value analysis committee and different requirements. And so for a small company like mine, we have 20 people and we really only have 2 of us focused on sales and marketing. We use external distributors for our boots on the ground. But that is the hardest thing, is getting into each hospital and really getting them to reuse it, buy again, keep the education, because the turnover for nurses is so significant,
Mhm.
right? So we're training a group of nurses. So pre-COVID, I trained 150 nurses in Seattle, and I also trained about 150 nurses in Ohio. And then COVID hit. And so then they were totally overwhelmed with COVID. And so they're like, Maureen, we'll get back to you when this is over. But when this is over, I've got to go back and train 150 nurses in Seattle and 150 nurses in Ohio.
Yes.
But that's really what it is hospitals are ever changing. and they have different requirements. And that's been the most difficult thing for us.
Yeah, you kind of have to recreate the wheel
Right.
every time, maybe not from
Mhm.
scratch, but a lot of changes. And so for your, and I think that probably some of the listeners can relate to having a small marketing sales team, maybe consisting of 1 or 2 people, you know? And so how do you, what do you feel like has been your strongest way to market and get your products out there?
I would say it's really the benefit of the product. You know, when your feeding tube clogs, you're not getting your medication, your nutrition, your hydration. That's a problem, right? And so some people say, oh, it's just not a sexy thing. But when you're not getting your medication, that's a problem. So
Yeah.
it's really just the story of how Tube Clear can really help patients and improve patient outcomes. And so we have UC Davis has been using our device since 2013 or 14, and they've been using it in the burn ICU. So you think about a burned patient, when they get burned, they've probably burned their esophagus. And so the fastest thing they need to do is get that feeding tube down there before the esophagus starts swelling up. And so you want to keep that line open. And so the argument of using Tube Clear regularly just makes sense for those patients.
Yeah, man, what you have created is so profound,
Thank you.
Maureen. You should feel really, really proud of that. And I think what you're saying is you're solving a big pain. I mean, literally, and it's something that the world needs, right? And so you're figuring out that gap in the market and continuing to innovate. So
Right. That's only the first one out of many. Yeah.
yeah, that's so fascinating. Well, I've learned so much today. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the women business owners that are listening today?
I would say if you haven't joined WBENC, use the education pieces to WBENC, and just network with all your fellow women, because it's been an incredible experience.
Yeah, thank you. That is great advice. If you're not certified yet, absolutely get certified and meet other amazing women like Maureen. And this has been awesome. Thank you. And,
Thank
you
you.
know, I'm excited to learn more about all of the innovations I'm sure you're going to be continuing to create and innovate. And so thank you for being on Women Who Own It.
Well, thank you for having me. Have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, if you enjoyed this, please write a review. We really appreciate that. And subscribe to Women Who Own It. Share this with other business women that you care about. And until next time, get out there and elevate yourself, because you are worth it. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.